In the silent early mornings of the American Midwest, a strange sound echoes among the empty warehouses and abandoned streets. The sound of what was once called progress, now crumbling into ruins. Detroit, Cleveland, St. Louis, Memphis, New Orleans, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Birmingham, Flint, and Gary, names that once symbolized strength, labor, and national pride, have now become symbols of something far darker. What was once the industrial heartland of America has transformed into a map of open wounds, where hope has been replaced by the echo of empty factories and entire neighborhoods forgotten by time. The collapse affecting these cities is not merely economic, it is a collapse of purpose. What was once the heart of the American dream is now the scene of slow decay. Avenues lined with ghost buildings, gas stations converted into makeshift shelters, and schools that teach what the system can no longer sustain. The idea of a better future. While economic indicators still speak of stability, the evidence on the urban ground tells a different story. Displaced families, increasing internal migration, and entire communities disappearing without resistance. America, which once built its identity on the promise of prosperity, now faces its own ruin. This documentary investigates a phenomenon that spreads like an underground crack, the silent decline of the cities that built the American empire. The question is inevitable. If the industrial heartland has already collapsed, how? Much longer before the rest of America begins to crumble. If you want to understand what's really behind this silent collapse and discover why the cities that built America are crumbling, subscribe to the channel now and follow this investigation to the end. What we reveal here may forever change how you see the map of power and decay in the United States. On the empty streets of Cleveland, the traffic lights still work, but rarely does anyone obey them. Shops have closed without warning. Billboards have faded with promises no one believes anymore, and silence has become the predominant sound among the rust-corroded buildings. The local economy, which once sustained thousands of families, now breathes on life support. Factories that once powered the country are locked up, their broken windows no longer reflecting the sky, but instead reflecting abandonment. There are schools where desks remain lined up, waiting for students who will never return. The lights still come on at dusk, but they illuminate only ghosts, not of the dead, but of a time that no longer exists. What we see in these cities is more than urban decay. It's a process of social disintegration. Unemployment, once a passing statistic, has become a permanent condition. Entire families live on welfare programs, while young people who manage to escape become part of a silent diaspora, migrating in search of any sign of stability. In the news, the numbers are softened by narratives of economic reconstruction. But anyone who walks these streets knows there is no reconstruction, only survival. The cracked asphalt and closed bridges don't lie. Detroit, for example, was once the world capital of the automotive industry. Today, it's a portrait of what happens when the gears stop turning. Parking lots are overgrown with weeds, offices accumulate dust, and once vibrant neighborhoods have become shadowy zones where fear has replaced routine. The same pattern repeats itself from north to south. Companies abandon entire territories, leaving a trail of empty houses, closed supermarkets, and churches transformed into makeshift shelters. The residents who still resist speak little. They have learned that no one listens. And yet, one only needs to look into their eyes to perceive the question that hangs in the air, a question that the government avoids and that the media rarely touches upon. How could the richest country in the world allow its own cities to rot in silence? Because what we see today may only be the surface of something deeper, something that began invisibly, deliberately, and is now spreading like an underground epidemic. But who, in fact, is behind the disappearance of these cities? Leave your opinion in the comments below. Behind what appears to be mere natural decay, there is a pattern, a calculated script, repeated with precision in different states, as if someone had decided which places should survive and which should disappear. When the factories began to close, the official discourse spoke of modernization and market adjustment, but the numbers show another truth. Many of these cities did not go bankrupt, they were emptied. Public investment was redirected, tax incentives migrated to new industrial centers, and what remained for the old working-class areas was administrative silence. Corporations and real estate funds saw opportunity where the people saw tragedy. They bought entire neighborhoods for pennies, let time do its work, and now wait for the value of the ruin to transform back into profit. Abandonment has become a strategy. Entire cities have become laboratories for speculation, where the despair of the population is merely a predictable variable. While families lose their homes, investment funds record gains in quarterly reports. It's capitalism in its coldest and most geometric version, where the urban map is treated like a chessboard, and each resident a disposable piece. The media, often supported by the same economic groups, prefers euphemisms. They speak of demographic change, of natural migration cycles, avoiding words like systemic displacement or economic engineering. Mayors are pressured to manipulate reports, banks to grant loans that will never be repaid. It's a drainage operation, a controlled bleeding, and those who suffer the most are those who least understand the game. In Gary, Indiana, the scenario is exemplary. When steel ceased to be profitable, the money evaporated. Unemployment reached 50%, but few realized that in the following months, technology companies and Wall Street funds began acquiring abandoned industrial land. The same movement is repeated in Memphis, Baltimore, and St. Louis, cities that collapse, not by chance, but by decision. And while the government talks about recovery, new cracks appear, new districts are decommissioned, and new neighborhoods are bought up by companies whose names don't appear on the signs. What was once the heart of the American working class is now just a waiting field, where silence is worth more than the sound of factories. But if all of this is part of a plan, the inevitable question remains: what happens when a planned collapse spirals out of control? When a city dies, it's not just commerce that disappears, it's the collective identity that dissolves. What was once a community transforms into forgotten territory, where laws become flexible and fear takes the place of routine. As urban collapse progresses, the consequences cease to be economic and become human. Empty streets become corridors of insecurity. Basic services fail, and life loses its rhythm. The absence of the state creates a vacuum that is soon filled by local gangs, factions, and people who have found a new way to survive in the chaos. In cities like Memphis and Baltimore, the rise in violence accompanies the decline of hope. Closed schools become makeshift shelters. Abandoned supermarkets become clandestine trading posts. Prolonged unemployment breeds despair, and despair in turn breeds flight. Those who can leave, those who stay, learn to move in silence, to live among ruins, to fight for drinking water and electricity as if they were privileges. Collapse is no longer a metaphor, it's everyday life. But perhaps the most devastating impact is psychological. What was once local pride turns into resignation. New generations grow up without any memory of what these cities meant, without knowing that they were once the engines of the country. The feeling is that the future has been cancelled, replaced by an endless wait, and while the rest of the world remains distracted, believing that progress is constant, these communities live in the suspended time of permanent bankruptcy. The infrastructure is crumbling, hospitals are operating at their limit, firefighters are responding to calls without enough fuel to return to base. The collapse is physical, social, and moral. And yet, when everything seems to be collapsing, a question pierces the collective silence. How far will this go? Because what you see in these 9 cities is just the tip of the iceberg of something much bigger. A reflection of what happens when the machinery that drives an empire begins to corrode from within. But what happens when the collapse ceases to be geographical and becomes existential? Leave your opinion in the comments below. In places where progress has stalled, something deeper is revealed: the modern void. It is the absence of meaning that accompanies the excess of everything. In these slowly sinking cities, there is internet on every corner, but no conversations on balconies. Lights are on in the early hours of the morning, but almost no one for whom they shine. The streets seem to have been designed for cars, not for people, and the sidewalks have become corridors of haste, where everyone runs alone, trying to escape a world that insists on remaining in the same place. Urban collapse at this point ceases to be merely an economic issue and becomes a reflection of the collective soul. America, which once promised freedom, now lives chained to productivity, surrounded by screens, stopwatches, and debt. Life has lost its human rhythm. Technology, which should bring us closer, has transformed silence into constant noise. Remote work has further isolated the individual, and the dream of autonomy has become a domestic prison. The progress that promised comfort has brought anxiety and abundance. Paradoxically has created scarcity, a scarcity of meaning, of belonging, of peace. Experts call this social fatigue, but perhaps it's something more serious, an emotional disconnection on a national scale. Even in the metropolises that are still thriving, people walk as if on autopilot. The emptiness is contagious and the isolation is now collective. The sinking cities are merely the visible version of what has already begun within each of us. The invisible collapse of hope. What if these 9 cities are not a portrait of a country in decline, but a foreshadowing of the entire world? Because perhaps the real collapse isn't in the abandoned streets, but rather in the minds of people who have learned to live without looking to the side. Behind the melancholy images of collapsing cities lies a haunting mathematical reality. Federal reports, hidden beneath graphs and euphemisms, reveal what the news doesn't say. The country that produces the most wealth also harbors millions of people who can't afford rent. By 2025, it is estimated that more than 38 million Americans will live below the poverty line. Every minute, 4 homes are foreclosed on by banks, and every hour, more than 500 people enter emergency food assistance programs. The numbers accumulate like bricks in an invisible wall, separating those who still believe in the American dream from those who have already awakened from it. In Detroit, the real unemployment rate, not the reported one, exceeds 25%. In Cleveland, 1 in 3. Homes is abandoned. In Memphis, 40% of young adults are in debt before the age of 25. In Baltimore, life expectancy in certain neighborhoods has fallen below 60 years. And in the hardest hit states, half of families are just 1 paycheck away from bankruptcy. Behind each percentage point, there is an interrupted story, a lost home, a city slowly emptying out, like a body that stops breathing. But the most alarming data isn't in the official statistics. It's in the silence of the spreadsheets. It's estimated that more than 70,000 small American municipalities are on the verge of fiscal insolvency, unable to maintain schools, transportation, or public safety. In other words, collapse is no longer the exception. It's the new norm. Ruin has ceased to be marginal and has become systemic. Still, the dominant narrative insists on talking about recovery. GDP is growing, they say. Unemployment is falling, they claim. But what is growing is inequality, and what is falling is hope. America, which presents itself as a superpower, continues to erect its skyscrapers, while the foundations of its society silently sink. And it is precisely in this silence that the question arises that no one dares to answer. What will happen when economic collapse turns into moral collapse, and the downfall can no longer be hidden behind numbers? There comes a point when statistics cease to matter, and fear begins to speak louder than any report. It's when people realize that the future won't be better, just more expensive, lonelier, more unstable. The collapse of the 9 cities is not an isolated event. It's a harbinger, a distant echo of what is approaching the metropolises that still consider themselves untouchable. New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, the same signs are already there. Discreet, like cracks beneath the varnish of shine. Housing costs tripling, entire neighborhoods dominated by homeless people, public schools without enough teachers, overwhelmed hospitals. It's collapse. Arriving through the front door, while the country pretends it's just a bad phase in the economy. Large cities have become overloaded organisms. They grow, consume, and collapse under their own weight. Each new skyscraper is built upon the skeleton of a neighborhood that has disappeared. Each luxury store that opens represents a small bakery that has closed. Inequality has become so normalized that it no longer shocks, it merely anesthetizes. And while the center still shines, the edges fade. When the economic heart begins to fail, the entire social body sickens. But there is something even more unsettling, the perception that no one is in control. Public policies seem belated, official responses sound rehearsed, and collective trust, that indeed, has already collapsed. Fear has ceased to be individual and has become pervasive, hovering over the country like a cloud that never dissipates. Because perhaps what is happening is not just the bankruptcy of cities, but the harbinger of the end of an era. What if the breakdown that began in the streets has already seeped into people's minds? Ultimately, collapse isn't an explosion, it's exhaustion. It doesn't arrive suddenly, but settles in gradually, infiltrating routines, conversations, and the simplest gestures of daily life. The American cities that are sinking aren't just decaying geographies, they are living metaphors for a system that has lost the capacity to uphold its own promises. What's crumbling isn't the concrete, but the belief that progress is infinite. The same force that erected skyscrapers now silently destroys the ground beneath them. On every abandoned corner, there is a reflection of a civilization that rushed too fast and forgot where it was going. The sound of the wind passing through broken windows is the same sound that echoes in the emptiness of people who have learned to live without ties, without time, and without purpose. The urban collapse has become spiritual, emotional, existential. The country that once inspired the world now reveals the price of its haste. An exhausted, connected, productive, and empty society. But among the ruins, there is also a sign of something that endures. In each house still inhabited, in each resident who refuses to leave, there is a silent spark of hope, perhaps the last trace of humanity amidst the cracked concrete. Because in the end, all civilizations fall, but some manage to be reborn from their own collapse. The question that remains is whether America will still have time for this, and more than that, whether we, spectators of that era, will have the courage to recognize that the collapse we are witnessing out there is merely a reflection of what has already begun within ourselves. If this documentary made you think, subscribe to the channel. Here we observe what the world tries to hide, give voice to what the system silences, and record what the future will try to forget. Because understanding the collapse is the first step to not repeating it.